Good morning, everyone. Welcome to AI4Anyone Live, the weekly show from the Human Stack, where we make AI accessible and actionable for nonprofits and social impact organizations. I am Sami Zoss.
And I'm Tim Lockie, and today we're kicking off Agentic April. It's a whole month of learning about agents in AI, what it actually means, where you're probably already doing it, and how to start handing off AI to agents without losing control. Stan, ready when you are.
Let's get into it. Can you hear that?
I can hear that. Are we going to just pass over the fact that I called you Sam? I feel like we're just going to let that one go.
I was just going to let it go. Look,
Thank
we're
you.
getting used
There we
to,
go.
like, for those that are wondering, I forced us into a locked intro and outro format, which will be really fun and is inspired, pulled from inspiration from my friends at Morning Brew Daily Show. They have a podcast every morning, and I love like that. I know when it's starting and ending, and I know when Toby's not saying "Good Morning Brew Daily Show." I'm Neil Fryman, and I'm Toby Howell. And I love it, and I like to say it with them every time. So that's what we're mirroring. But as you can imagine, Tim and I we're working on it.
We're always a work in progress, right? I like that. I was thinking about just, for the month of April, just calling you Sam instead of Sammy, just to see how long it would take before.
That's a choice.
That's a choice.
You can look. I'd go for it. We'll see if I respond. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I look forward to this with you every week, so much because I just find it really fun. And so yeah, I'm doing great.
I do have a lot of fun showing up here, and I always love. I mean, I love our chat. I love our people that are watching. I love like the random things we discover together every time.
Yes, exactly. Completely agree.
We do have a couple announcements today. Before we get started, the first announcement is I didn't even tell you this before the show, Tim. Today's episode brought to you by NASA. Not really, but we're going to the moon today.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, I had no idea. I never
Yeah,
do.
they're sending folks to the dark side of the moon. That launches this afternoon.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't. I had no idea.
My friends at Morning Brew Daily Show told me that this morning, and I was like, perfect. I know exactly what shirt I'm going to wear for AI4AnyoneLIVE.
That is perfect. Wait, they're launching it today?
Yes, they're launching today. And it's crazy. We've got like, some of this is wild to me. It's like the first woman, the first African-American man, the first man over a certain age. And I'm like, it's 2026. Where have they been? But hey, you know what? They're going now. And so I guess they launched this afternoon. And between like the launch pad and the rocket, it's like taller than the Statue of Liberty. And then they are headed to, so they're going like around the moon, which I guess in past they've only gone to the side of the moon that we can see. They're going around to sort of like check out the dark side of the moon. So like, ooh, right?
Okay.
And then they're going to use the moon's gravity to like slingshot them back to Earth. Crazy.
Okay, that's interesting. I have to admit, I'm wondering if that's all a big April Fool's joke, though.
It is not. That is a really good dang. That's fair. It's not. And if it is, NASA and I are going to have a problem. But I did find that out earlier than today.
Okay.
But now I'm nervous. Like, did I not?
I am absolutely like 99% convinced that what is happening is an April Fool's joke on that, because it's a great one. And I don't think we have the tech to get people to the moon right now.
No, that's not true.
We have the tech, but we don't have the supply chains in place.
Yes, we do. They told me the whole plan all the way to 2030.
Did they say it today?
China. Yeah, and yesterday. Stop it. I don't know.
I'm just saying. Anyway,
someone put bold of NASA to launch us to the moon on April Fools.
I am with that person. I think that person and I have a lot of doubts here.
It's at like 6:30 Eastern, so I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Okay, great. And
other announcement. First, hello, Megan. Welcome back. And we've got Bonnie Blankenship. from
Bonnie?
Dallas. Thanks for joining us, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Nice to see you. Um, do you want to say our second announcement, or do you want me to?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about this for a while behind the scenes, and it just feels right that we would try something like this. So we're going to do a couple of episodes where we're linking through APIs through HeyGen and 11 Labs. We've created agents in the background that are going to run the show for a few weeks, and we're just gonna like let it loose and see what happens with that. So
Yeah.
I
So
know you
essentially,
know
like
I've been building that for a while.
the rest of Agentic April is going to be Agent Sami and Agent Tim. Like you aren't
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
see
right.
us here.
Yeah, right. Well, you will. It just won't actually be us. So,
Crazy.
yeah, I know. HeyGen has come so far. So anyway, yeah. Um,
Carly sent something that I'm like convinced is telling me that I'm right.
yeah.
She's she's calling in from Washington D.C., so I trust her implicitly. So we're going to the moon.
I feel like Carly, thanks for calling in. Marty, it's so great to see you. I'm actually in Bellingham, Marty, like just like
Oh yeah, you
90
guys are right
minutes
next to
north.
each other.
Yeah, exactly. So great to see you. I love that we have people calling in from everywhere. Like that makes it really
Yes, and
easy.
thanks for telling us where you're
So,
coming from.
right. Yes, absolutely. Love that. And Carly, I'm going to be in DC next week at the Good Tech Summit, which we're going to say more about in a little bit. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Also, I feel like we should probably make it clear that the whole us doing agents thing is an April Fool's joke. So we will
part
not
of me was
just
kind
be
of like,
handing.
could we do it though? Like I went
uh,
down this whole rabbit hole of like, wait a
yeah, I
minute, why
know.
don't we just try that and see what happens
Right.
for an
Yeah.
episode?
I mean, it's getting close with HeyGen, but it's,
Yeah.
I
Look,
mean,
guys, Tim and I
yeah, right.
love our agentic
Yeah.
and like playing around with AI and stuff, but this is almost more therapy for him and I to do
I was just
than
thinking the
anything
same thing.
else.
There's no way
And
if
so,
I, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
If I
couldn't
could
get
have
rid
an
of it.
agent take over a part of my life, it would not be the most fun thing I
No.
do. Right.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So,
So,
we
anyway.
just also, it's been a busy couple weeks for us, and so we got on and we were like, "Well, it is April Fools. We gotta figure something out."
I know.
And
Yeah, exactly.
this was the best we had, folks.
Yeah. Okay, so we definitely need to go track down whether Artemis 2 is happening and what's going on with it.
It
So
is.
I'm like
Carly
running
said it
some stuff
is.
in the background. Yeah.
Don't be like those people. No, what are you running in the background? Because this is where people are like, well, I asked ChatGPT, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain to people that, like, yes, I use AI every day, every hour in my life. But I'm like, guys, that's not it. You don't just like ask ChatGPT and assume that that's like the right answer, especially if you're just saying, hey, is this true or is this an April Fool's joke? Also,
Uh,
how cool is this, Tim? Carly said my colleague from CI's AI hub will be at the Good Tech Summit 2 on a panel on AI readiness for climate and nature nonprofits.
awesome.
So fun.
Okay,
Thanks for letting
great.
us know that, Carly. You and
Yeah,
Tim will have to meet up
absolutely.
when you're in town next week.
Yeah. Um, okay, yeah, thanks for that. I will Carly, I'm gonna follow up with you to find out who that is so that I can say hi. Um, and I love that that's going to be led by Anna. Like Anna Lerner Nesbitt is like somebody I follow closely. Always love grabbing coffee when we're in the same place. So we've been planning to meet up in DC, and that's great.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Big love. Okay, so last week I wanna kind of dig into this because we've got some stuff to cover. And Agentic it can feel a little complex, especially because what we focus on here in AI for Anyone Live is more the literacy aspect of what we do, and getting in and building agents and things can feel a little bit that next step. But there's a couple things coming that or have already come really that do make agentic AI and agentic workflows much more prevalent in what we do. Next week, Tim, I'm actually going to pull us back into our good old Gemini and show how some of the agentic, like what the difference between sort of autonomous workflows, agentic workflow, like sort of that difference between what's a workflow that you trigger every time, what's an agent do within a workflow, what is an autonomous agent, all those things. But even our good old Gemini has kind of like launched into some of that recently. But last month we had important conversations around how to use Claude and skills, and I always call them plugins, but I can't use that word because that's not what they are. It is like MCPs and connectors in that way. And those set us up for understanding what agentic AI exactly is. So today's kind of like that on ramp. We're defining agentic AI, we're showing you where you already sit on the spectrum, and then drawing the lines of what's safe to hand off, what we think is safe to hand off, right? Like, because it's different for the nonprofit sector, the for profit sector, an individual, a team. Like, that can look different for everybody. So, I guess to start the conversation, I really just want to understand, Tim, like, you are like the king of metaphors here, right? Of like, how do you compare something to something that we understand a little bit better? And so, what would you put you on the spot? What's the metaphor for what agentic AI is, comparatively speaking, to the rest of what we understand AI or workflows to be?
Yeah, I'm gonna take that to probably a place you don't expect, which is not what it is, but how you get it to work.
Okay.
Which might sound a little bit strange. You've heard me talk about this before. The more I do this kind of work, the more I realize how important what I'm going to say is, because when I don't do it, I end up with bad lunches. Okay? So
Oh,
here's
yep,
what I
yep.
mean by that. Here's what I mean by that. If you're a parent and you've made lunches for your kids over and over, you know that the dream is to get them to make their own lunches, right? And so I want you to think about your kids as little agents that you're trying to literally give them agency to make their own lunches, right? The goal is that
Mhm.
like they're doing it on their own. They're thinking about all the steps, and they've got the lunch in their backpack by time to leave the door for school, right?
Yep.
That's the objective. And that is a great way of talking about an agent. You have given them a definable task that it can go do, and it can think through every element of what to do with it. What So the technology is there to make that happen right now. So it's
Okay.
already there. It can do it. Where it's not working and why this is really hard is that the human side of getting it to that point is involved because we have to adjust our behavior. So if you're a parent, you want your kids to make lunch, you have to go through these steps, right? First, you have to define what is a lunch. What are the ingredients? Where do you find them? How do you know if a lunch is well made? How do you know,
What is a lunch?
what I know exactly like
There's like
what
a
is a
Shakespeare or
lunch?
something in there.
I know, to lunch or not to lunch, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Holding a paper bag instead of the skull. Okay. Anyway, I think that is. I think that's the point that we're at right now. Is that it's it's not about whether the tech can do it. It's about whether we as humans are developing our skills to create the steps and break down the processes and go through our own learning to know how to create the instructions for that. I personally am terrible at delegation and understanding and breaking down steps and handing those off. Like it is just like what I do really badly. So maybe I just notice this a lot more because when I see it done well, you know, lunches are well made, right?
Hmm.
Does that help? Is that maybe that's not even close to what you were asking for, but
Well, it's the I want to razz you and say it wasn't necessarily what I was asking for, but it does help, right? Like, so there's an in between there. I think
Mhm.
at the end of the day, agentic, like, to pull it back to what it is, because I think that you're right, that does paint a really good idea, a really good metaphor of what it does. Agentic AI is the tool in which you can program something to happen without needing you to say go. That doesn't mean you aren't in control of the trigger. There's a difference between autonomous agents and agents that are, given specific tasks for specific things like create your lunch, some of that stuff. Um, I also want to show you, I created something for you.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I'm just really bad at figuring out how to load it in, so it's fine. Um, But some of those I think are just the pieces to discuss of like, and that's what we're going to get to this month is what's the difference here. And here's your image, Tim. Is it loaded up yet? That's our good old Gemini. What is a lunch?
I love that. That is
What is a
great.
lunch? Okay. Anyway, um,
Nice.
so I've prepped a little bit of like the agentic
But wait, before we
spectrum.
move on from that, I think actually there is something important about that graphic, which is we take it for granted that we know what a lunch is. And that maybe the most important thing is to
The
point
funniest
out
thing to hear.
we just don't even, it's so obvious that we don't think about what that is. And in order to understand what an agent is, you like, this might be one of the best ideas. You have to start at this level
Yeah.
with an agent and build its awareness of what it's doing. What an agent then does is whatever you have defined, right?
Oh, I see what
That's
you're saying, which is why you're kind of saying that like one of the things that's really hard for you is to get agents to do work that you could hand off because where Tim, what he just said and what I'm often helping Tim with is like, no, 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 define what you want to have, define what lunch is,
yes.
define
Yeah.
what, because lunch
Yep.
to me is SpaghettiOs out of the can. Big love. But lunch to Tim might look very different, right? And both of us
I
can ask,
hope. I'm just saying, I really hope it looks different.
oh, but both of us can ask that, right? Both of us
Yeah.
can ask to make, we can ask an agent that is pre-prepped to make lunch. But if it doesn't ask you to specify what do you mean by lunch, then you're just getting whatever whoever trained that expects lunch to be.
Right. The reason I'm taking it back to this question
Feel
is
trippy talking
because,
about it like this though. I'm like, what is lunch?
well, the reason I'm taking it back to this is that the agent part of it is actually relatively easy, right? The hard part is like, think about training a kid for lunch and you get a lunch that is all gummy bears, right? Like, you and I would say that's not a lunch, right? Because we
Tim,
didn't say what is a lunch.
stop. My that just reminds me for elementary school, I got in trouble once because I did pack my own lunch, and
Okay, I'm dying here. What?
I just brought a chocolate Easter bunny for my Easter basket, and I just knocked my
Yes.
mom's ear.
Perfect.
And the teacher
Yes.
was like, I think I told them my mom packed my lunch because I didn't want to get in trouble. And my mom's like, don't tell them I just gave you a giant chocolate bunny for lunch.
Yes. This is making my point 100% because your teacher looked at that and said, that's not a lunch,
And I said, yes, it is.
right? And you were an agent, a lunch making agent with either improv, like either they didn't define what lunch was or they did and you were like, I'm doing it my way,
I
right?
wanted a
And
different
right,
definition. Yes.
exactly. And then the Easter Bunny is a hallucination, right, of sorts. So I feel like that's
Oh,
the
that's
point
so
here,
good.
is that agents are not about the tech. Agents are about our ability to understand what we want them to do so well that we can tell them when they're not doing it. This is the piece I
Mm,
think people miss, is that they think it's about the technology, and it is not. It is about the psychology defining outcomes clearly enough that they can break it down and do them.
that's a really good.
I'm so bad at that that I had to build a prompt mater to help me build the prompts I need to build the definitions I need to build the instructions for the agent. Like, it's a 5-step workflow for me. Honestly, I
Which
have
is
an
funny
agent doing.
because most of the time I just need an hour on the phone with Tim, and we've got whatever
Right.
he needs for his agent.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Anyway, is
But there's
that
something
help?
to the
Does that
art
make
of
sense?
asking, like, okay, but when you say lunch, because Tim, you are a great example. And it's funny because I do this, but when it comes to you, I do a better job of figuring out how to adjust it. Also here's my next image for you.
I'm like dying for this. Like, I like that.
Gemini is just really hitting for me today. Um
That is awesome. I love the meme.
But there's something
That
to be
is
said
great.
for the art of asking the right questions. And that's why we've seen, like in Claude with our demos last month, we saw Claude asking us questions
Yeah.
to get clearer understanding of like, okay, you say you want lunch, but do you want a light lunch because you're eating early? Do you want, do you have any allergies? Do you like those are things that Claude's like, I'm not going to make these assumptions. I don't have background on you that answers these questions. So I'm going to ask you to answer them. Now, it may store that. So next time I say, make me a lunch, it's going to assume I want the same lunch, or it's going to ask, do you want the same lunch as we built last time? Or do you want a different one? And then it needs to ask more questions. But that's where like, and I know Claude in particular has gotten better at that, but like even Gemini will ask you like, hey, let's get some clarifiers. And I feel like they'd been doing that sooner
Yeah.
than even Claude was. But I love
Mm.
the user interface that Claude kind of built it in. So Tim, why don't
Well,
you tell folks about the Good Tech Summit, and then I want to get into our sort of like agentic spectrum. And you haven't actually seen the artifact I created for today yet, so it's really fun to see.
wait.
One, you'll always know if Tim's like, "Wait a minute, I don't necessarily agree with what we just put the human stack branding over." And then, but it is really interesting. I mean, this is based on the things that you and I develop in our other meetings and our internal discussions and things, and it's fun to see how I think I've gone back to this a lot. I think I said it last week of like my brain works in artifacts. And I think I've got even more evidence that that's true because I can teach using an artifact way better than I can teach using anything else.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see sort of like your initial take on the agentic spectrum that we're looking at, how we might adjust. And then I do even have for the end of the episode, sort of like a your first agentic workflow. Here's how you
Mm.
guys can try it at home. So
Cool.
tell us about the
Yeah.
Good Tech Summit. Tell folks how they can get a discount, and then we'll get right back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good Tech Summit is put on by my friends Brian Komar and Andrew Means. Shout out to both of them. I've been friends and watched their work for years now and always impressed. Super excited about it. There's been an event that I've gone to for a number of years called Good Tech Fest. And this is the first year that they've made that into a summit. And it's happening in DC next week. I will be there live with Carly's colleague as well, and a lineup of other headliners talking about, especially about AI, but this is really about tech in the philanthropy space. And this issue is really important right now. And the issues surrounding it, the conversations that I know we'll have. I've seen the speaker lineup. I'm really excited about that. So if you are in DC or around DC or can get to DC, grab this QR code, grab a registration, and I hope to see you there. If you do go, please let me know because I'm actually flying in early and would love to meet up with people that are in this work and that like this work.
I love it. I'm gonna we'll put the QR code up back at the end of the episode as well. And Megan was just giving some shout outs to her friends in the comments. So we always love to spread our love, especially to Megan, who's like our day one here all the time and hyping us up. So much appreciated. All right, I'm going to scoot you guys over to this screen. So that way we've got a full screen to see the work that I've got for us here. Let's share the entire window. All righty. Now let me change us on here so that way everyone can see it as much as possible. All right. So we've got this nice little look at this, Tim. So for friends back home, this is Bill. I have a Claude skill that I created. I think I demoed it last couple of weeks. It's got the human stack
So
branding
good.
in it. So
Oh
I
my
can just
gosh.
blurt out what I want and then it'll make it look human stacky, so I don't have to worry about like my brain doesn't have to think in design because this isn't meant to be. Now I do want to clarify when I do things like that like if we were to make this something that Tim were to offer as a paid piece from the human stack, we would certainly spend more time on intentional design, right? This is meant to be, I don't want to spend 80% of my time on something that's a barrier like design that I don't have a skill set in, when the goal is to make sure that it is known that this is the human stack. It feels like the human stack, but ultimately the goal is the content, and it's a one time or a few time use, not long term use. So like this isn't a trade for designer work either.
But I mean, this is an agent though, right? An agent built this.
Yeah, an agent with, I don't know. I see skills more like custom GPTs or custom gems than I do agents. And by your definition that we've talked through in the past, those are more just repeatable instructions given on top of the instructions I've got in the chat. So it knows every time I ask for this, it has to have layer 1, which is what I'm asking, built with layer 2, which is what it's already hard coded to do. I think an agent is where it goes and actually takes additional action for me. So maybe every time I have it, maybe the skill, this is where your plugins come in, Tim. I think plugins are your agents, where the plugins know if we are asking to build something for AI4AnyoneLIVE, you build it like this and you go. But if it's for Upskillerator, you build it like this. If it is meant to be a print piece, you build it like this. So I have that pickleball club that I help that I always love talking about. I created a custom gem for them, and I wanted them to be able to make flyers in their custom gem, but to be able to print it is kind of difficult because it codes it, right, in HTML. And so what I did was I put in the instructions every time that if you're making a flyer, add a button to the code. So all they have to do is find a code interpreter like that I've done on live here before, and then it hits this here button shows up, and it automatically has it print set up. The print screen pops up. They don't have to like download as PDF, make sure it's sized correctly, yada, yada, yada. So I don't necessarily know that a skill would be what I would call an agent. I think it's the first step for an agent because it's those routine instructions. But I compare them more to like custom GPTs and gems.
Okay, so here is one way of thinking about that. A year ago, would you have called it an agent?
I think you want my answer to be yes, but it's still
No,
no.
I want your answer to be authentic as always. So,
Yeah, I'd still say no.
okay, yeah. I think that the question here that I run into a lot. So in Claude, agents are a discrete thing, right? So I've
Mm-hmm.
created Dr. Doofenshmirtz that is my innator maker, and it is my like it's because I don't know if you're like into Phineas and Ferb. Dude can make anything he can make it. So I like that. So I've got Dr. Doofenshmirtz is my innator maker, right? He's actually an agent with skills that can go do things, and that's defined. The skills that he's working on them, it's hard. It's the line for me is very blurry because I see the way that these are built, and they're all just different versions of an MD file, right? And so to me,
Markdown
I guess
file,
it
for those
gets
that don't know what MD is.
yeah, markdown file. Thank you so much. And Claude especially, like Claude's one of the only models that gives you insight into the back end because it give you a downloadable version that you put on your desktop and literally see what it's doing. So I guess part of what's interesting to me is that at its root level, the only difference between an agent and a skill is what it's called, but they are the same architecture, and is just there's a different question to me about how much autonomy and agency it has. Maybe that's where
Mm,
I think it gets like confusing. Um, so I think like there are actually sub skills that it's doing in here that you're like the print button that you're talking about. That's huge, right? Like
mhm.
that is going through so many different steps that you'd have to go through, and it's just doing it and thinking about it. Um, the only thing that's not, I mean, you're having to call it and tell it to do that, but now you've automated that call, so it's happening inside the script, right?
Yep.
Does
Okay.
that make does that make sense? You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I think agents, I mean, and I've never been shy from telling folks when I think there are concepts that are complex in a way that tend to confuse me. That doesn't, I think I said this to Jonathan Edwards a couple weeks ago. Like, I need to figure out a way to admit when I am confused without also like playing into the idea that I don't know as much as I know because I
Oh
know a
yeah,
lot more than it
absolutely.
makes it seem. But I think there's
Yeah,
something like, like my approach to wanting to be that open, hey, we don't all have it figured out is way more important to me than coming off as the expert in this. But
right.
I think for me, I've never understood singular agents, and that's why it's always been complex for me. So no matter if you put it in Claude, no matter if you put it in Gemini, like a singular agent to me, uh, duh. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just me being really good, like in my mind, right? Like that is just me
Right. Yeah,
being
yeah.
good at uh, creating workflows using AI. Like in my mind, that's what that is, which it is kind of what it is, right? But like
Yeah.
I think of agentic where we actually start to get this like autonomous, how do I train it to think the way I need it to think so it makes the decisions I need it to make, not go do this thing and come back with it, which is in its core what an agent is. An agent is that simple. I think we just think
I
it's so much more complex.
I feel like one way of making this a little bit so first of all, every expert, true expert I've ever met is a learn it all, not a know it all. And they are way less worried about whether they know something and much more they're interested in finding out what they don't know. So, Sami, I consider you an expert. It's so obvious to me, I would never even tell you that, but you are an expert in this work, period. And all of us are learning it together. I don't know the definition of an agent. I just
How do we
am
define it on
like putting this
FAI?
up.
Let's look.
I think that's interesting. Like, do it. Let's look at that. The thing I that might be helpful is to say
We don't.
the thing to say is if you put on a spectrum between an assistant and an agent, it gets easier to think about. An assistant is uh, you have to be more descriptive. You have to say more of what you want, and so it might be that you would think of the skill as an assistant, right? As the assistant gets better at what it does, it starts to pick up where to do what. And you can build backing systems so that there's recursive learning so that they get better on their own, or you can spend more time training them, but eventually you get them to a place where it takes less instruction and prompting from you in order to get the same outcome, right?
Mhm.
The print button I still think is a great example of that. That to me is running in the background on its own, getting called and happening without you doing anything because you've defined it really well, so now it can do it.
Mm.
And I think that, so to me, I think that these are just layers of instructions and context until they create an outcome that feels magical, but it's still mechanical. And does that make sense? So to be clear,
Yeah.
I don't know where the line is either. I'm just like figuring it out with the rest of the world. And the line is moving all the time because the infrastructure is getting so much stronger that the
Oh, it's
mechanics are
crazy.
are getting easier, right? Does that make sense? I'm
Yeah,
curious from
absolutely.
those tuning in, like, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have a clear idea of what an agent is? Are we completely missing the boat here? Um, I feel like this has been a common question people are raising. When I was working with Beth Cantor and Josh and Project Evident, these
Mhm.
questions were coming up, right? And they still are. So,
I also have to say, I love that I still default to Google. I think I said this at the
yeah,
top of
yeah,
the episode when
totally.
everyone's like, I
Yeah.
ChatGPT'd this or I asked ChatGPT and I'm like, I don't know. I want to see what like Google has deemed expert first. I think it's because I trust Google's SEO pretty well, which is sort of like a whole different.
I mean, partly I just don't trust the ask Google. So, like, I will still, it's funny. I go to ChatGPT for answers like this, not Claude, not Gemini. It's weird.
Oh, I would go to if I were to choose a tool, it would be Perplexity first, but I don't like to do the ask, the AI overview. I just like to see like what has the SEO chops that the world has referenced enough that Google's going to put at the top of the search response,
Yeah.
and I start digging in from there, which I just do think is
Yeah.
funny. Also,
You know that
look at Google says that we're
most
going
of
to
the
the moon.
Ask AI at the top of the page comes from Reddit.
Well, because it's got the most activity and the most responses.
Exactly. Right. Yep.
You missed the
Yeah.
part where I said Google says we're going to the moon today too.
I have been working in the background to get ChatGPT to admit that it's a April Fool's joke, and it will not do it, even though I say take opposing view. And Yes, it is very. It very much thinks that that is a real thing. So
Told you.
I know you did. I just like
You just
Okay.
hate
This
me.
artifact, by the way, is really cool.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'll get back to that. So, and we'll make sure this is we're trying to work on like how we get some of this stuff posted after the fact
Mhm.
for our viewers. And so we're gonna today and probably next week we'll get into this your first agentic workflow. I don't know that we'll get through this piece today.
Mhm.
Um, but so it's kind of giving you the like here's what all of between the brain dumps and the research that we've done. Agentic just means how much agency are you giving the AI? The question is never is this agentic or not? It's how much did I give it? Maybe that's why I get confused, actually, because I see that spectrum so differently because I do agentic so much more frequently than I realize sometimes
Mhm.
that I'm like, of course I gave it that agency. I said, just go ahead and read and tell me what you think should happen and do the thing. Carly loved the real time
Um,
jailbreaking attempts. Wait till you I'll show you what the next image I'm trying to generate for you.
yeah.
I'm going to hit go on that while we go back to this. So, I love that it's kind of telling you here then down here where the agency is, right? So level 1 is prompting. You hold all the control. Structure, you define the path. You set the goals, AI chooses the path. So you're like that's where you're saying I know what I want this to look like. I don't know how to get there. Go ahead and get there, which it's at this level that nonprofits in particular need to be careful because AI doesn't have the same, if any, depending on what you're using, does not have the same moral compass, does not have the same ethical guidelines, right? Like that's what you and I work on with FAI all the time is making sure that if you are setting a goal, you also understand how the AI is achieving that goal and agree with the methodologies used, especially in nonprofit, especially in fundraising. That is so important. And then once you get that down, you fully delegate, right? Like you schedule it along with the goal that you set and it runs without you. This is really helpfful, actually.
So in Cowork, right? Cowork now has an easy scheduler, which is just amazing, right? So Quad Desktop has Cowork, and in Cowork, you can schedule something to happen. Is that, in your mind, is each one of those schedules an autonomous agent because it is on its own rhythm doing work and then just giving you an outcome?
Autonomous is a weird one. And if you were in our, I'm on the framework review committee with FAI and I ask very similar questions because I wonder the same thing. In my mind, autonomous is that next step of like, I didn't even set the schedule. I've given you permission to essentially proactively decide when to do something. So I th- I don't know if that's what everyone would agree with. I don't know if that's what you would agree with. I would still argue these two are the same. One is just more agency in that like I now trust it. I've iterated enough that it does achieve the goal through the means that I want it to every time and it's not, it's not messing up yada yada. So it's one of those like I can set it and forget it and just review. It's kind of like okay, my employee now knows that I want this to be my report
Mhm.
format.
Yeah.
I don't need to walk them through it every time and look at it every step of the way. I can say, you know what, every day I just want you to send me the report.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know, like that gives that person, if this were a person, it gives them more autonomy and more trust. Does it give them autonomous, like just go and do? Not necessarily. What I would say the autonomy would be, or like the autonomous piece after this would be, okay, based on what that report that you gave me or that you create every day, decide and do what action needs to be taken. And then it starts to go. So there's a difference between like a goal, like a schedule, and like a 1 or 2 step goal and deliverable, which is what we're talking about here, versus like the do this first part and then based on what produces of this first part there are exponential responses on that next part, but I trust and I'm giving you the agency to decide what happens next. Does it go to me? Do we escalate it to leadership? Do we rerun it because something looks wrong? That's where that agency goes into them. And I think I bet I could convince myself once I got really good at that stage, Tim, that that's not autonomous anymore because I've spent all the time to get, you know what I mean? Like, so the human in the
That's
loop
what I'm
piece is just
pointing
so
at.
important for me.
Yeah, right.
Also, look
Yeah.
at, here you go.
What does it say? What is the line? Oh, Doofenshmirtz.
The Stufenschmerz.
That's
The other
awesome.
ones were better, but here you go.
I like it. That was great. Um, okay, it's so interesting we're talking about this because over the last 2 weeks I've been creating my model for both human and agentic identity. So what this
Hmm.
boils down to, if you really want to go all the way zoomed out, is that in order for something to be more autonomous with high agency, you have to give it enough identity to know if it's performing at its function. As I've
Mm-hmm.
done this work, I've like put this into a framework. I'm not ready to roll it out yet. The framework has been buried inside of other concepts I've had for a couple of years now, but it's not different than the work that you and I do when we're working in guidance and manage success with organizations. And we are literally helping guides and organizations create more agency in their ability to manage the um, the information systems of that organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same work that needs to be done there and the same outcomes apply. And so I 100% agree that this is a question of spectrum, right? That I think is the bottom line. And I think that, yeah, prompting to delegating, to me, I think it's actually there's one more step after delegating, which is um, intentimating, right? Where it's intent architecture of how does it decide if it should delegate to itself or not, right? And how does it decide if it's
Mm.
on track or not? And how does it measure? And this is a part that I've been focused on like a fanatic for the last week. How does it know if over the course of 960 shifts that it is run, if it is living into the intent that we have been giving it, right? That to
Yep.
me is actually, and so again, back to the very first thing where you are prompting so well, and it goes back to your behavior and your expectations for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's helpful or just muddying the waters, but I think there's an identity piece in here that people are worried about because it sounds so human, but it is a
Mm-hmm.
missing factor in helping agents understand themselves. And even more importantly, to me, is revealing missing pieces in the way that we develop performance architecture for humans inside of organizations. That's the me the biggest takeaway has been here's what we're not doing for humans, and here's why a lot of them are failing at work and we don't recognize it.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's a whole psychology and like if you're really good at prompting AI, you should be a really good leader because like if you're good at getting AI to do what you want it to do. And the better I get at that, the more I feel like I can delegate to others. I can't because I have to get good at describing what I need it to do and
Yes.
iterating and providing feedback and all the things that make a good leader, right? Um, there's a
Well, I
couple
want to be careful
examples
on that.
of
I want to say yes
oh, go
and
ahead.
no because actually, raw delegation from a leader goes down really poorly, right? If you
Yeah.
are right, there's a whole secondary piece, which is the receiver side of that. So one is the delivery side. What am I, the other side is how do I deliver that to different people in the way that they receive that the best? People
Mhm.
that have,
Yes.
and you're
And that's
very
the
good
nice
at
part
that.
about AI
It's almost
is
invisible, right?
the
So
nice part about AI is it receives feedback the same way every time.
yeah, I agree. It's a lot easier to give it feedback. Okay,
Yes.
this has been, I think, probably more philosophical than we were
That's okay,
intending.
it's the 1st of the month, that's kind of how this
Yeah,
works, right? Like, we get into it in the 1st of the month, we try to then kinda pull back on what we're getting at, what are the definitions, what are the things, then we spend the next 2 weeks really talking through Sorry, I'm trying to talk and unshare my screen, which is not always easy for me. Then we talk through, what it is we want this to, like, what do we want to build? What's the tactical, etc. And then the last of the month, I always try to convince you to, like, let us save for whatever jam session we want to have. So, super, super excited. I'm gonna switch us here. Sorry,
Man,
I
I
wanted to
love
make
what you're
sure I
doing
got
with
to the text I'm
Restream. It
in.
is so cool. The
It's
way you're
super
building out
fun.
Restream. Yeah, no, it's great.
I'm working on
Really
it.
cool.
They've got an API that I'm really trying to figure out how to use better too. So, but on that note, next week, like I said, we're going to get tactical. It's going to be our best tips for actually making your agents work better, scoping tasks, structuring content, building handoffs, less philosophy, more playbook, right? So, Tim, do you have your notes up? Because I have a little outro spot for him.
Yes, let's do it.
It's your turn. I already read my part.
Oh, come with questions, come with things that broke. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it live. We'll probably make it even worse than it was when you started that. You come with questions, you'll leave with even more. But you will enjoy the process and the conversation along the way.
Absolutely. And one more time, the Good Tech Summit, April 6th through 8th in DC. Tim speaking, code join me for $50 off. You can scan that QR code and get the link. Until then, you guys stay curious.
Stay human.
And we'll see you next Wednesday. And I got to click the next button. Dang.